Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Rafael Espinoza versus Arnold Khegai fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get out there for you guys. I really appreciate the support in which I've had with it so far. And there should have just been a video released public which came as a result of the Patreon in a Jack Catterall versus Echo Esserman fight prediction, which will just be out on YouTube now live. And so like I say, if you want to get anything of yourself from there, like I said, the link will be in the description and it is really appreciated. Thank you very much. Let's get straight into this one though. And I mean, for the most part, I suppose it is still nice to see that Top Rank have finally kind of found out what they're doing with their events and they're getting their fighters back on shows and things like that. I mean, to be fair, Rafael Espinoza has fought once already this year, but there's a decent amount of fighters in which haven't had a tremendous amount of opportunities come their way as a result of what's happened with the ESPN and Top Rank split, and so of course now Top Rank with Top Rank Classic, and they're putting on events which do seem to be free to wear in America. So that's nice to see, but it's something a bit different. And like I say, this is another example of it. And so far, I mean, they haven't had any majorly big events on this Top Rank Classics. They've not really kicked it off with a bang. They started with Michaela Mayer versus Mary Spencer, which was technically a unification to an well, it was a unification, but it wasn't really that big of a fight. It was on a Thursday night, and this one isn't really that big of a fight either. They have announced recently Xander Zayas versus Abbas Barayu, which is a good fight. But again, I'll touch upon how that is kind of typical Top Rank, kind of only really wanting to give their fighters opportunities and push on to fight against other world champions and to even get them title chances and opportunities by fighting the easiest of opposition and the opposition that is easiest to work with, as well as, from what it seems, Bob Arum isn't always willing to work with some of the other promoters. And again, that seems to be evident with Xander Zayas going down that route of going to fight with the likes of an Abbas Barayu, which of course is still a credible name, but definitely would have been an easier option for him to fight than to go on to fight one of the other super welterweight options like a possible Virgil Ortiz or a Murtazaliev or Sebastian Fundora. Somebody like that would have been a bit harder of an elite level task. And it's the same with Espinoza here as well. I mean, he's back again after a fight, well, in another fight, which is kind of not really what the fans want to see. I mean, other than Rabesi Ramirez, which of course, Espinoza went and caused the upset in the first place by defeating him, he hasn't really taken much of a step up, if honest. He's probably taken a bit of a step down. I mean, he of course, fought Rabesi Ramirez, and in between that, he fought Torino, which wasn't really a big kind of fight, but it made sense to give him a title fight opportunity. Won that via stoppage, went on to fight Ramirez, won that via stoppage, which was a bit of a strange stoppage, but still a stoppage. And then, of course, he went on to fight Edward Vasquez, who, gave a few problems to people in the super featherweight division who were like the likes of Joe Cordina, but he won that via TKO as well. And you would think, after a fight like that, you'd want to push them on, possibly give them a unification fight, if not one of the best fighters, that the featherweight division has to offer. And I just don't feel like Arnold Khegai really is that, to be honest. You know, yes, the featherweight division is in a bit of a strange kind of predicament at the moment because a lot of the elite names have kind of moved on to the super featherweight division. And again, you look at the likes of Stephen Fulton, who's about to fight Oshaki Foster and probably vacate his, featherweight title as a result, meaning that Bruce Carrington, if he's not already been made, he probably is about to be made a full world champion. But then, that means that it's Bruce Carrington as a champion. We've also got Angelo Leo, who has only defended his title once, and he's held it for over a year now, a good amount of time over a year now, and he's only defended it once, and that was against Kameda in Japan. which wasn't really a big name, of course. And then you look at, Nick Ball, of course, he's doing his thing, which has been good, and he's been fighting relatively consistency and has fought at quite a high level. But again, like I say, I just feel like the actual featherweight division is being held up a bit at the moment, and just like I say, really isn't being pushed enough. And I feel like somebody like Rafael Espinoza, who's been really looking impressive and has been getting all these stoppage victories, should, in my opinion, be pushed a bit better than a fight against Arnold Khegai, just, in my opinion. I'm not trying to, disrespect Khegai, but again, like I say, it does seem to be the typical top rank strategy of them not really wanting to work with any of the other promoters, even though, they do literally have, Bruce Carrington probably is about to be a world champion, and they also have of course, Angela Leo as well. So all the fights are there ready to be made. They're just not pushing their fighters enough to do so. Hopefully, if Espinosa goes on to win via a nice stoppage here, he could get an opportunity. But this is still a big moment for Rafael Espinosa because, of course, it's a title defense, but it's his first defense of the world title that he has in his home country of Mexico. So again, that's a big moment for himself, as most kind of homecoming fights are. They're not normally the biggest of names that they're against because they really want to shine a light on the homecoming talent coming, and they don't really want the homecoming fighter to have a drastic defeat. But like I say, it's a big moment for him. And, of course, you look at Espinoza kind of stature wise, physically, and you do have to kind of make the somewhat comparisons to Sebastian Fundora. Of course, he's not quite as big as Sebastian Fundora, but if he was, he probably wouldn't be able to make the featherweight division. But for the division, he is definitely a height bully. He will be way taller than the majority of his opponents. He's 6'1" with a 74-inch reach compared to Khegai, who is 5'5" with a 66-inch reach. So, what, an 8-inch reach advantage plus a 6-inch, no, 7-inch height advantage. I think my maths is right on that. But yeah, it's just crazy. And like I say, he's kind of getting used to fighting these fighters who are the smaller guys. He's getting used to punching downwards, and he looks comfortable when he's doing so. And I feel like Khegai does fight pretty similarly to Vasquez to an extent, trying to come forwards and be bullish. There's a few things he does different that perhaps could cause Espinosa a few problems, but again, for the most part, all the kind of things are leaning in the favour of Espinosa for this fight, and I'm sure he'll be the heavy favourite coming into it. And again, when it's quite a stacked weekend of fighting in general, with of course Eubank Ben too, and then also the UFC as well. I just don't know if this fight is really going to stand out to the fans to be the one to watch, in my opinion. Of course, it probably is stylistically going to be quite a nice, entertaining fight, but again, like I said, I just don't know how much fans would want to tune into this compared to the other options that they do have. Khegai, in for the most part, like I say, I don't feel like he is deserving of a world title shot. I mean, you look at his record and the fights in which he's had earlier in his career. And I mean, earlier this year, of course, he fought Jarrett Gonzalez, who has never really been one of the elite level names. He's always been a bit of a gatekeeper type of fighter who's been able to give tough tests to, quite a few of the good fighters coming up, but like I say, has never been able to really trouble the best of the best. And he went and lost a split decision in that close fight, which was, like I said, earlier this year. And of course, he also fought Stephen Fulton back in 2020, before Fulton was a world champion, and lost that fight as well. He hasn't been stopped, and even though he almost he got rocked a little bit against Gonzalez, and he had a close fight against Baez, which was probably his best win, and that was back in 2022. Baez, not an awful name, but again, a bit of a gatekeeper type of fighter. But, other than that, he's basically just fought all over the world, with, I think, Russia, America, Spain. I think his last fight was in Germany, plenty of other countries as well, Ukraine. He's fought all over the place. And now he's fighting in Mexico as well. Like I say, he really is somebody who's willing to take the opportunities wherever possible. But again, for the most part, do you make the argument that he deserves a world title shot? I'm not really too sure. I mean, if you compare it to Jarrett Gonzalez, who of course went on to actually win the fight against Khegai, he got given the fight against Brandon Figueroa, which was on a big card, and I'm sure he got paid pretty nicely for it, but that wasn't a world title fight, and that was Brandon Figueroa coming off a loss, but was still a very tough name to go in against, whereas Khegai getting gifted a bit more, even though he lost. Yes, he got a win, out in Germany against a lower rated opponent, but again, it's just not really, in my opinion, kind of warranting a world title shot when you've got a couple of other decent names, which are floating around, which could be a half decent, better option, in my opinion, for a world title shot. Somebody along the lines of like an Elijah Pierce, in my opinion. But speak about both fighters individually, though. Espinosa as a fighter, he's somebody who will continually have a high output and will tee off if he gets you up against the ropes. He plants his feet pretty well, in my opinion, and I also think he's showing improvements. I think his game plan and the way that he sets his punches, and he's becoming a little bit, more of a complete fighter. I think there are still evident flaws in his game, but I think he is improving, and he finds gaps well. He works the body well. He's got very good, in my opinion, shot variation. He has really kind of learnt to be able to punch downwards well, which again, of course, like I say, is something in which he has to physically get used to, and I'm sure he's had that attribute kind of in his favour his whole career, but he seems to be able to punch down well with power as well now, which is nice. He's got that kind of surprising, overwhelming power as well, which is, again, physically he doesn't look like he's going to be hurting you, and to be fair, a lot of the punches, he doesn't really twist into them a lot, and he just doesn't, they look like they're coming from kind of arm punches to an extent, but it's that overwhelming, kind of surprising level of power which is always causing problems to the opponents. He's not going to be getting the one punch knockouts for the most part, but like I say, he's causing problems to his opponents that they can't deal with, and he is for the most part a good finisher, and he wants to punch his straight shots pretty much through you, is what it looks like when he's throwing them. He's good when putting his fast combinations together. He doubles and even triples up his shots nicely. He, like I say, maintains that good work rate. He takes up quite a lot of space as well, and as a big guy you want to be doing that, and he can physically move you around, so if he does get backed up he can push you back, and he is willing to do so, which again showcases that from the big stature, even though you can seem a bit lanky to an extent, he's still got a good level of physical strength as well. Negatives about him, I think he, similar again, comparing him to Fundora to an extent, he doesn't always utilize his range that well. For the most part, that's always been a criticism of Sebastian Fundora, like I say, just not utilizing his range enough and his jab enough. And again, it seems to be the case quite similarly with Espinosa, where he can put himself in more dangerous positions by just not using his range enough. He can be caught by big overhands from smaller kind of explosive fighters. Of course, you remember the first fight with Robesi Ramirez where he got really hurt with a knockdown, and managed to come back, and that was a very impressive performance for himself to be able to come back. But he was caught by that big smaller kind of overhand because he is always punching downwards, which often means that he's not bringing his punches back to his head that well, which again, like I say, is a problem in which, again, comparing him to Sebastian Fundora had when he got knocked out against Mendoza, somebody who actually does that well and is actually able to bring their punches back pretty well is Gabriela Fundora. Actually, I think she's improving doing that. So again, that would be something which I would like to see an improvement from Espinosa for this fight. He can lunge in himself. Like I say, he doesn't really twist into his shots that well. He can overthrow the uppercuts, just using it a bit too much. It's a nice weapon to have, and a lot of fighters don't use it, enough. But he can kind of overuse it, and I think in that last performance he was doing it a bit too much. His footwork, again, is a bit of an issue at times. It does cross over quite a lot when he's coming forwards. He's not really holding his shape very well. He's not squaring up a tremendous amount, but you can see it. he gets a bit overexcited and he starts crossing over his feet, kind of just running towards you with quite big strides, which again could definitely catch you, being off balance. Again, going back to the knockdown that he suffered against Robeisy Ramirez in their first fight, that's exactly what happened. And he needs to be a bit more wary of his footwork, I think. And I mean, for the most part, to be fair, he doesn't really use too much movement. I think he will try and circle off the ropes a bit if he gets backed up, but like say, for the most part, he's not really using too much movement. He is quite flat-footed. Khegai as a fighter, though, he's somebody who can work off his lead hand pretty well, and I think a lot of his best work comes, as a result of leading off that jab quite well, or just the lead hand in general. He pairs up to the body and to the head nicely with his left hook. He's got a nice tight guard, much more compacted than that of Espinosa. He brings the early pressure, so that will be, making the fight probably quite entertaining from the get-go. He's wanting and willing to work in the pocket. Again, all similar things to what, the past opponents of Espinosa kind of have wanted to do. Again, you look at Edward Vasquez, similar type of fighter to an extent, wanting to work in the pocket and then just couldn't, be able to deal with Espinosa when he was doing that. But, Hegai's got strong body work as well, and to be fair, I think most of the work actually goes there. When you look at his fights, especially, even the loss against Gonzalez, he was using a lot of his punches and going to the body for the majority of the fight. Maybe if he would have switched it up, going to the head a bit more, he might have been able to cause a little bit more damage earlier on. But like I say, he was going to the body a lot, possibly a bit too much. He throws pretty much all his punches with intent. He's good when he's trying to be a bit more in and out. When he is actually trying to fight a bit more in and out, he's not got awful head movement. And again, he can fight at a bit of a mid-range, and then he can be a bit difficult to land on because he can be kind of all the way in or all the way out, which is quite impressive, but it just doesn't last long enough when he's actually trying to fight like that. He'll often resort back to just, being flat-footed, covering up, and that's when he can, get caught quite a lot. He holds his shape pretty well for the most part, and he gets low to generate a decent level of power, which again could make him quite explosive and means that he could possibly land a good shot on Espinosa. He knows how to make the fight messy. Again, I mean, he was able to do that well in the Joet Gonzalez fight. Of course, he got a point deducted in that fight, but he was still able to make the fight pretty messy, which again, somebody like an Espinosa maybe hasn't had to deal with a tremendous amount so far. And something in which he does do quite well, which is, I don't know if too many people would have noticed, is when he's coming in, like I say, he's often, when he comes out, he can be really far out of range, so, opponents can't land on him. Then when he comes in, he can come, like I say, all the way in, and then as a result, he can then kind of spring back and go back out, but then come back out at a different angle, which can, get him out of bad spots, which is quite a nice thing to see, and it's something in which I feel like a lot of fighters don't see and don't do enough. And again, that's nice to see. That shows a good level of footwork, and like I say, the way that he holds his shape as well. Again, it's nice. And of course, he has heart as well. Like I say, he wasn't able to get. He didn't get stopped against, of course, Fulton or against Gonzalez either, even though Gonzalez had him hurt on a couple of occasions. Negatives about him, I don't think he's as fast as Espinosa in my opinion. I think he is more limited in combinations. His combination punching isn't bad, but it's a lot more, you know, one-dimensional than that of Espinosa, who, can overwhelm you with combinations, whereas I don't think Khegai is somebody who will do that. He can be made to overreach. He's more than willing to get into a firefight, which often does lead to him, getting caught quite a lot and getting hurt. He doesn't really try and counter too much, even if he is kind of backing off and trying to make you miss. He's not then, capitalizing and countering. His head's on the line for the most part. Again, he can lead in with his head as well, and he's not often able to gain the respect of opponents, especially at an elite level. That's been proven now. He can be getting caught when he's being too greedy and can be halted quite substantially by a jab, which again Gonzalez was able to do well. He can sit on the ropes. He slows down a bit later on as well, which again will be interesting to see how he comes into this fight, if he's going to be so aggressive at the start of the fight or not, as a result of, like I say, him slowing down a little bit in the mid rounds against Gonzalez. He can be outthrown. He doesn't deal with hand speed the best in my opinion. He allows himself to be a target to be hit quite often, and he can, like I say, be hurt even though he hasn't been stopped just yet. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Rafael Espinoza is going to be able to win via TKO in round 9. I think he's going to be the first person to get a stoppage on Arnold Khegai, which would be a bit of a statement there, and again another reason for Top Rank to actually push Espinoza along in his career. But I think this will be a good performance, an overwhelming performance. Again, Espinoza used to somebody like Khegai. Even if Espinoza is, lunging in, kind of reaching in and using a, being a bit over aggressive with the messier footwork, I just don't think Khegai is going to time him or counter him or really punish him enough. The main thing in which Espinoza's got to be wary of is the occasional kind of overhands when Khegai comes from quite low. But if he can catch a few of them or even just deal with that, then other than that, I think Espinoza's speed and power and just overwhelmingness will be able to be more than enough to be able to get a stoppage in this fight against Khegai, or at least be able to win via a comfortable decision. Then who he goes on to fight next, I mean, like I said, there's a couple options of the kind of names who are elite names who are ranked highly in the featherweight division. Like I said, the division's not the most stacked at the moment, but that could all change next year, of course, if the likes of like an Inoue come up, or if a Nakatani comes up, or if anybody like that, like I say, is willing to move up a division. But of course, Neri is a good option. He's moved up from the super bantamweight division, has picked up a couple of nice wins, and he's now ranked number 1 with the WBO, so that could be a good option. Like I mentioned, Elijah Pearce, who I've had the pleasure to speak to on this channel, he's fighting Para on a overtime show in a couple of weeks, I think, or a few months. I'm not entirely sure the date, but that would be, the winner of that. I think, he's ranked highly with majority of the world bodies, and he's really wanting a world title shot. So again, that could be a good fight to be made as well. Or if they're actually going to finally push Espinoza for another, or for a unification fight, I mean, something like an Angelo Leal, why not? I doubt they would give him something like a Bruce Carrington, because they probably want to build up Bruce Carrington a bit more. But, an Angelo Leal versus a Rafael Espinoza fight is entertaining. That's what the fans would want to see. That would be a brilliant fight, in my opinion. But, we'll have to wait and see maybe if His Excellency gets involved. But, it's there for Top Rank to be made. So I don't know why they don't just do it. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.